It's Casey from MakingMavin, and I've got these old pair of boots, and we're going to be repainting them. So first, we've got to mix our base with the black acrylic paint and the varnish. I chose satin. It can be shiny or satin. I just like satin. You can also use other acrylic paints if you want the base color to be something else. I just like the fact that the black covers very well. As you can see, these guys are kind of really scuffed up. I got them off of Craigslist for about 20 bucks, and my daughter wore them till they look like this, and I want to keep them for my son, so I've got to do something about it, and this is what I'm hypothesizing will work. So start in a space and just go around the boot doing a thin coat of this. Get the little edges as close to it as possible. Don't go into the fabric as best you can. Do go down to the side of the sole because it'll just give it one nice finish versus two different colors. That way you kind of have a blank canvas. I had to do this in two sections. You could do one boot and then the other. Either works, whatever you feel comfortable doing. Now I'm going to mix a pattern color. I'm going to try to make the color of the dots with this color that's kind of dried out, and these other two plus a little of the varnish mixed together. This is a good point to let you know that you can pick whatever pattern. I just pulled up Google and typed in easy patterns and it came up with tons that you could do. I'm not a great freehander, so I chose a simple leaf pattern and it goes interestingly. I would suggest to do it on paper first, but that's up to you. I choose some sort of simple pattern if it's your first one. That way you get a nice feeling after you complete it and it then looks cool. For this pair, I wouldn't do like just dots all over. I think that would look boring. Maybe some stripes, because polka dots and stripes go together, or bigger and smaller polka dots, either one, a lot of, or even just circles. Big circles would do well too. I'm gonna just pick an arbitrary spot on the boot and go around. You could map it out first with little lines or markings of a lighter color or darker color, just acrylic black where you want it, but make sure you do thin coats, and if you want them to be thicker, do 2 coats versus just the one. And you can touch up as you go with black. Another reason for the thin coat is the black then won't create a huge mound when you're touching up. I'm using a fairly thin brush for these little leaves, and I'm trying to do it in a triangle pattern, which turns out to be pretty hard on a 3D object, but that's okay. I like a challenge. Once I got the hang of this pattern, I kind of focused more on the shape of the triangle that I want and how it's going to look from a distance. You can do that, or you can, like I said earlier, write it out. Both would work. I did find that painting on top, you can smudge it out if you make a mistake. However, it still is visible and you'll have to touch it up with black. Because it's long and it took about 4 hours to paint all this, I'm going to speed it up for you. back over, and anything I didn't like, I painted out in black, in a thin layer of black, sometimes 2 layers of black. And I touched up the rim because I didn't want that to have paint on it. And I touched up anything else that might have looked a little off from that go around. Then we're going to go in with the satin varnish again, this time just the varnish, and we're going to do 1 coat and let it sit out for about 3 hours. It's going to cause you for the next layer to not ruin what you just did. So you did all that work, now it's going to protect that. What you're going to want to do is paint it all the way around with smooth, slow strokes, and it will create a milky finish at first, and then it'll go to satin. If you have a drop, make sure you grab it with your brush because it will stay there. It creates a plastic-like finish. Also, if you have pets like me, you're going to want to make sure there's no hairs because it will stay in there and you'll probably be able to feel them at the end. As you saw, I pulled one out. It's not recommended to have the pets near, but you know. I've used this particular varnish for about 15 projects so far, that pumpkin being one of them. If you go to my Instagram, you can see what I did to it. I performed surgery from when my dog chewed on it, and I've done several other cool projects with it. It's expensive at first, but I think it's pretty worth it, even for somebody who can't afford a lot. If you want to have something enriching, that's pretty cool to get. Once you're done, like now, you're going to want to clean your brush with dish soap, otherwise it's going to turn into a solid rock. After you waited the time for it to dry, then you can add the next layer. You can be creative and do bright colors on this one. I chose to be a little bit understated with the darker teal that I used. It just kind of adds interest where there was flatness before. I also added little stripes to the leaves and little circles in between the triangles, and I think it was cute. It was fun, like kid shoes should be. Since you already put down the coat of varnish, this coat you can take a rag to because this paint hopefully has no varnish in it. Like my first one had varnish in it and I could not wipe it away. That's why it was nice to have the black there to amend whatever I do. But for this one, I only touched up with black very rarely because then I could mess up the pattern below pretty bad. But if I'm just using acrylic, you can just wipe it away with damp cloth or even some alcohol on a Q-tip. Either one would work, but the layer below has to be dry. So if it's not dry, don't do this step yet. And because I'm a big fan of making your own colors, I made both of mine. But you could just pull bottles off the shelf. These ones were cheap at Walmart. You could find some on sale at Michael's in those little packs. I'm sure you can find acrylic paint just about anywhere. However, what I did was I took my first color and I added a darker color that was in the same family, so it was still teal, but it was a darker teal, and then I added a drop of black so that it would become the darker shade grayish that I was going for. If you're going for lighter and you want to stay in the same shade range, you can add white, or you can add a lighter blue to it if you're doing blue or anything but red, because red obviously turns pink. And once again, I do remind you that I said at the beginning you probably should try out your pattern first on paper. It's easier than doing it on a boot. I just went in and kind of was like, okay, this is what's going to happen. Some of it worked, some of it didn't, but paper is probably the best bet. Also, you can test your brushes out on it. I had a couple brushes that had little hangers on it. I could have trimmed those off before I even stuck them into the paint if I wasn't just doing this. The angle was weird at places because I was trying to let you guys see, but it was kind of difficult for me to see. So I'm going to have to figure out how to fix that for the future. But I think it turned out okay. See here, me going through a couple of different steps all the way around the boot. One's just swiping the leaves with a little line like I said before, and then the little circle that's in the middle. I also go around and once that's dry, dot the middle if they got too close, because these are little circles. If it got too close, I would dotted it with a bit of black, and that way it wouldn't look like any of them are different, and it was just little enough to where it looked like I did it right the first time. And I know before when I was painting it looked like it was really fast. I was speeding through like I said, so that wouldn't take forever, but I did take my time and do delicate strokes so that as I went I wasn't going over the leaves and past into the black, because the black I didn't want to have to touch up too much. So one thing I would suggest doing is if you feel like you're building up too many layers, wash it off. Just wash it off. Try again, because the more layers, the more texture you're going to get, the more likely things are going to rub off. And that's not what our goal is. Our goal is to prolong the life of the boggs and slash or any other rubbery boot, shoe, or fantastical thing that you paint, because you can use this varnish for quite a few things. I would stick to like plastic or like this rubber things. I've used it on glass I think once with varying degrees of success. It kind of peels off if you put it in the dishwasher, so don't paint cups with it. But none of this was for what it's used for typically, so you know, when you're bending the rules, why not try everything? Once you're done painting, you're going to let that dry. Then again, you're going to go in with the varnish, paint 3 smooth coats, waiting 3 hours between each one, and then you should have a good project. I think ours turned out fantastic. Hopefully yours will too. If you give this a try, let us know how it goes down in the comments. And if you like the video, please give it a thumbs up.